And I think I'm live. I'm not 100% sure because Facebook has apparently changed the way it is doing. Here we go. Right. I believe I am live now. So apologies about that. It would appear that Facebook has changed since yesterday, has changed the way it does live broadcasting. Anyway, good evening to you all. Um, my name's Anthony Murphy. This is Mythical Ireland. Just a tiny bit about what this is about. Yesterday's live broadcast was called Coronavirus Tales or Coronavirus Stories or something like that. This isn't about coronavirus at all. This is about Irish mythology. And I wanted to do something to stem the boredom and to distract us a little bit from the negativity and the fear and all the headlines that are going around about coronavirus. And I thought, what better way to do that than to do some reading from Irish mythology? So I'm just keeping an eye on things. It's not, the interface is not showing whether people are watching or not, and it's not immediately showing. Um, well, I don't know whether comments are going to come up or not. So apologies about that. I'm a tiny bit distracted to start with because I'm not 100% sure. In fact, very best way to find out whether this is live is to go onto the Mythical Ireland page on the phone and have a look and see what's going on there. There we go. So that's, you are live. Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, but there's nothing showing on the screen indicating that. It's very confusing. Anyway, it's changed. Not to worry. We will take up where we left off yesterday. And we've got daylight. So it's still bright here in the Mythical Ireland office. So just to let you know about where I am, this is my little sort of private office in the house. That is my collection of books, part of my collection of books, my reference library. I'm very lucky because Newgrange is about I measured it on Google Earth as the crow flies. It's in that direction through that bookshelf there. 4.1 miles as the crow flies. If I get into my car now and drive out there, I can be there in less than 15 minutes. So it's wonderful. Audio and video are fine. Thank you. Is that Jan or Jan? I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but please accept my apologies. So anyway, by way of stemming the boredom and by way of, I believe that actually reading mythology is a great way to deal with anxiety. And I know a lot of people are anxious at the moment, and I don't want to dwell on that because the purpose of this is to get away from all that and get away from all the headlines and all the fear and the shock. We had difficulty getting groceries in the supermarkets yesterday and today because people were panic buying. But as of yet, there's no reason to panic buy. Anyway, I'm continuing with Charles Squire's book, originally published in 1912 as Celtic Myth and Legend, Poetry and Romance by the Gresham Publishing Company, reprinted by Senate Books in 1998 as the mythology of the Celtic people. So this reprint is actually already 22 years old. And Judy McQueen has joined us. Hello, Judy. Yeah, so I can see comments, which is great. I just can't see how many people are watching, and I can't see the likes and the reactions. By the way, that's not a problem. That's not what this is about. The Rise of the Sun God. And we are almost 4 minutes in. And it's about time I got round to doing the actual reading. It was as a result of the loss of his hand in this battle with the Fir Bolgs. That was the first battle of Mythical that we spoke about yesterday. Okay, I'm going to have to plug out the speakers because we do not want Facebook interruptions. It was as a result of the loss of his hand in this battle with the Fir Bolgs that Nuada got his name of Argadlov, that is, the silver-handed. For Dian Kecht, the physician of the Tuathdanan, made him an artificial hand of silver, so skillfully that it moved in all its joints and was as strong and supple as a real one. But good as it was of its sort, it was a blemish, and according to Celtic custom, no maimed person could sit upon the throne. Nuada was deposed, and the Tuatha De Danann went into council to appoint a new king. I should tell you, as I said yesterday, just to repeat, that where squire refers to Celtic custom or Celtic mythology, we now know that a lot of the Irish mythology is pre-Christian, but Celtic is a sort of a label that doesn't really fit. What we're really talking about here is pre-Christian and, in fact, prehistoric Irish myth. They agreed that it would be a politic thing for them to conciliate the Fomors, the giants of the sea, and make an alliance with them. So they sent a message to Bres, the son of the Fomorian king Elahan, asking him to come and rule over them. Bres accepted this offer, and they made a marriage between him and Bridget, the daughter of the Dagda. At the same time, Kian, the son of Dian Cecht, the physician of the Tuatha De Danann, married Ethne, the daughter of the Fomor Balor. And we heard all about Balor yesterday and his evil eye. And Esther has joined us. Hello, Esther. No problem. It'll all be online later, exactly. And Barb Jordan is in as well. Hello, Barb. So I saved the video. It'll be available on the page after, and I will also download it and re-upload it to the YouTube channel in a while. So it'll all be there to catch up on. Then Bres was made king and endowed with lands and a palace, and he, on his part, gave hostages that he would abdicate if his rule ever became unpleasing to those who had elected him. There are some lessons in that for modern Western democracies, and we're not going to get into modern politics right now, but I think you know who I'm talking about. But in spite of all his fair promises, Bres, who belonged in heart to his own fierce people, began to oppress his subjects with excessive taxes. He put a tax on every hearth, upon every kneading trough. Trough. I read something recently about English words ending in ough and how they're all different. Tough, though, dough, and all those. And upon every quern, as well as a poll tax of an ounce of gold upon every member of the Tuatha De Danann. So in other words, no sooner had Bres, who was one of the Fomorians, had become the king, replacing the deposed Nuada, he imposed taxes, and an ounce of gold was the tax on every member of the Tuatha De Danann. By a crafty trick, too, he obtained the milk of all their cattle. He asked at first only for the produce of any cows which happened to be brown and hairless. And the people of the goddess Danu granted him this cheerfully. But Bres passed all the cattle in Ireland between two fires so that their hair was singed off, and thus obtained the monopoly of the main source of food. That's very interesting because, Idir Naga China, hello, Jenny Moore is in as well. Idir Naga China is an ancient ritual practiced at Bealtaine where the cattle were driven between two sacred fires at the beginning of May to purify them. To earn a livelihood, all the gods, even the greatest, were now forced to labour for him, that is, to Bres. Ogma, their champion, was sent out to collect firewood, while the Dagda was put to work building forts and castles. How ignominious. One day, when the Dagda was at his task, his son Angus came to him. "You have nearly finished that castle," he said. "What reward do you intend to ask from Bres when it is done?" The Dagda replied that he had not yet thought of it. "Let me give you some advice," said Angus. "Ask Bres to have all the cattle in Ireland gathered together upon a plain, so that you can pick out one for yourself. He will consent to that. Then choose the black-maned heifer called Ocean." Fascinating. So there's an agricultural meaning, behind some of these myths. Cows and cattle in general in mythology are I suppose, a throwback to times when cattle were an extremely important measure of wealth, and they were your currency, the number of cows that you had. The Dagda finished building the fort and then went to Bres for his reward. "What will you have?" asked Bres. "I want all the cattle in Ireland gathered together upon a plain so that I may choose one of them for myself." Bres did this, and the Dagda took the black-maned heifer Angus had told him of. The king, who had expected to be asked very much more, laughed at what he thought was the Dagda's simplicity. But Angus had been wise, as will be seen hereafter. Meanwhile, Bres was infuriating the people of the goddess Danu, that is, the Tuatha by adding avarice to tyranny. It was for kings to be liberal to all comers, but at the court of Bres, no one ever greased his knife with fat or made his breath smell of ale, nor were there ever any poets or musicians or jugglers or jesters there to give pleasure to the people. And of course, this was a very, very important thing, especially in medieval Ireland, never mind what came in prehistory. For Bres would distribute no largesse. Next, he cut down the very subsistence of the gods. So scanty was his allowance of food that they began to grow weak with famine. Ogma, through feebleness, could only carry 1/3 of the wood needed for fuel, so that they suffered from cold as well as from hunger. It was at this crisis that 2 physicians, Meach, the son, and Aramid, the daughter of Diancecht, the god of medicine, came to the castle where the dispossessed king Nuada lived. Nuada's porter, blemished like himself, for he had lost an eye, was sitting at the gate, and on his lap was a cat curled up asleep. The porter asked the strangers who they were. "We are good doctors," they said. "If that is so," he replied, "perhaps you can give me a new eye." "Certainly," they said. "We could take one of the eyes of that cat and put it in the place where your lost eye used to be." "I should be very pleased if you would do that," answered the porter. So Meach and Aramid removed one of the cat's eyes and put it in the hollow where the man's eye had been. The story goes on to say that this was not wholly a benefit to him, for the eye retained its cat's nature, and when the man wished to sleep at nights, the cat's eye was always looking out for mice, while it could hardly be kept awake during the day. Nevertheless, he was pleased at the time, and went and told Nuada, who commanded that the doctors who had performed this marvellous cure should be brought to him. As they came in, they heard the king groaning, for Nuada's wrist had festered where the silver hand joined the arm of flesh. Meach asked where Nuada's own hand was, and they told him that it had been buried long ago. But he dug it up and placed it to Nuada's stump. He uttered an incantation over it, saying, "Sinew to sinew and nerve to nerve be joined." And in 3 days and nights the hand had renewed itself and fixed itself to the arm, so that Nuada was whole again. When Diancecht, Meach's father, heard of this, he was very angry to think that his son should have excelled him in the art of medicine. He sent for him and struck him upon the head with a sword, cutting the skin but not wounding the flesh. Meach easily healed this. So Diancecht hit him again, this time to the bone. Again Meach cured himself. The 3rd time his father smote him, the sword went right through the skull to the membrane of the brain, but even this wound Meach was able to leech. At the 4th stroke, however, Diancecht cut the brain in 2, and Meach could do nothing for that. He died, and Diancecht buried him. And therein, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the very strange tales of the Tuatha where father kills son. So just in case everybody thinks that they're all full of love and light, it's not all nice, unfortunately. And upon his grave there grew up 365 stalks of grass, each one a cure for any illness of each of the 365 nerves in a man's body. And of course, you've probably noted that that corresponds also with the number of days in the year. I think the old translations from Cát Maig Tuaire, the Battle of Moy Tuaire, say that it was 365 different types of herbs, I think. Aramid, Meach's sister, plucked all these very carefully and arranged them on her mantle according to their properties. But her angry and jealous father overturned the cloak and hopelessly confused them. Angry and jealous father. Is he reminding you of anybody here? An angry and jealous father, sounds a little bit like Yahweh from the Old Testament. If it had not been for that act, says the early writer, men would know how to cure every illness and would be immortal. And Kristen has joined us from California. She's off to work at the moment. Yeah, of course, what are you, 7 hours behind us? And we'll catch up later on. Yeah, thanks for the stories. You're very welcome, and I hope you enjoy it when you get back to it. The healing of Nuada's blemish happened just at the time when all the people of the goddess Danu had at last agreed that the exactions and tyranny of Bres could no longer be borne. It was the insult he put on Carpre, son of Ogma, the god of literature, that caused things to come to this head. Poets were always held by the Celts in great honour. Margaret is saying herbs more likely. What did I say? Was it herbs? It is, yeah, I think you're right. It's herbs, not grass. Again, Squire's translations may not be entirely reliable. Poets were always held by the Celts in great honour. This is very true. And when Carpre, the bard of the Tuireann, went to visit Bres, he expected to be treated with much consideration and fed at the king's own table. But instead of doing so, Bres lodged him in a small, dark room where there was no fire, no bed, and no furniture except for a mean table on which small cakes of dry bread were put on a little dish for his food. So this ties in nicely with the whole history of Irish, the famous Irish hospitality, and where it is lacking. One should definitely complain. The next morning, Carpre rose early and left the palace without having spoken to Bres. It was the custom of poets when they left a king's court to utter a panegyric to their host. I think a panegyric is not a song or a verse sung in honour of a sovereign or ruler. But Carpre treated Bres instead to a magical satire. It was the first satire ever made in Ireland. Miala da Tura is saying that the Tua predate the Celts. Yes, we were talking about that, Miala, and yesterday I was talking about how, Squire's use of the word Celtic is a little bit erroneous because the Celtic people were actually an Iron Age people, and it is likely that the Tuireann mythology goes much further back, as you rightly say. So Bres was treated by Carpre to a magical satire. It was the first satire ever made in Ireland, and seems to us to bear upon it all the marks of an early effort. Roughly rendered, it said, "No meat on the plates, no milk of the cows, no shelter for the belated, no money for the minstrels. May Bres's cheer be what he gives to others." This satire of Carpre's was, we are assured, so virulent that it caused great red blotches to break out all over Bres's face. This in itself constituted a blemish such as should not be upon a king, and the Tuireann called upon Bres to abdicate and let Nuada take the throne again. Bres was obliged to do so. He went back to the country of the Fomors, underneath the sea, and complained to his father Elahan, its king, asking him to gather an army to reconquer his throne. The Fomors assembled in council, Elahan, Tethra, Balor, Indech, and all the other warriors and chiefs, and they decided to come with a great host and take Ireland away and put it under the sea where the people of the goddess Danu would never be able to find it again. At the same time, another assembly was also being held at Tara, the capital of the Tuireann. Nuada was celebrating his return to the throne by a feast to his people. While it was at its height, a stranger clothed like a king came to the palace gate. The porter asked him his name and errand. And just wanted to let you know that this is from the story, The Battle of Moytura, for a very reliable and scholarly work and translation of that from the Irish Text Society is Elizabeth Gray's Cormac Tuireann, or Battle of Moytura. And what it has is it has the Irish text on the left-hand pages and the English translation on the right-hand pages. So you can get, it's not that lengthy actually, the Battle of Moytura. It's a reasonably small book. I'm not sure how much that costs, but it's on the Irish Text Society website, just in case you're interested in what we might call a scholarly translation. Squire was, I think, writing for a more popular audience in 1912. The porter asked him his name and errand. I am called Lugh, he said, or Lugh, as it's sometimes spelt. I am the grandson of Dian Kecht by Kian, my father, and the grandson of Balor by Ethna, my mother. And of course, Lugh was descended from both Tuireann bloodlines and Fomorian. But what is your profession? Asked the gatekeeper. It says porter here, but the gatekeeper is the common translation. For no one is admitted here unless he is a master of some craft. I am a carpenter, said Lugh. We have no need of a carpenter. We already have a very good one. His name is Lugh. I am an excellent smith, said Lugh. We do not want a smith, said the gatekeeper. We have a very good one. His name is Gobnew. Yes, Miala is talking about pronouncing the Irish. My Irish pronunciations aren't all that good either, so I won't get carried away. I am a professional warrior, said Lugh. We have no need of one, said the gatekeeper. Ogma is our champion. I am a harpist, said Lugh. We have an excellent harpist already. I am a warrior, renowned for skillfulness rather than for mere strength. We already have a man like that. I am a poet and tale-teller, said Lugh. We have no need of such. We have a most accomplished poet and tale-teller. I am a sorcerer, said Lugh. We do not want one, said the gatekeeper. We have numberless sorcerers and druids. I am a physician, said Lugh. Dian Kecht is our physician, replied the porter. I am a cup-bearer, said Lugh. We already have 9 of them. I am a worker in bronze. We have no need of you. We already have a worker in bronze. His name is Credne. Then, I'm not sure if there should be a fodder on that last E, but anyway. Then ask the king, said Lugh, if he has with him a man who is master of all these crafts at once. For if he has, there is no need for me to come to Tara. So the doorkeeper went inside and told the king that a man had come who called himself Lugh the Uldonach, or the master of all arts, and that he claimed to know everything. The king sent out his best chess player to play against the stranger. Lugh won. Chess, by the way, in ancient Ireland, we had a game called Ficil, which is a little bit like chess, and that's what they're talking about, a game of Ficil. Lugh won, inventing a new move called Lugh's Enclosure. Then Nuada invited him in. Lugh entered and sat down upon the chair called the Sage's Seat, kept for the wisest man. Ogma, the champion, was showing off his strength. Upon the floor was a flagstone so large that 80 yokes of oxen would have been needed to move it. Ogma pushed it before him along the hall and out at the door. Then Lugh arose from his chair and pushed it back again. But this stone, huge as it was only a portion broken from a still greater rock outside the palace. Lugh picked it up and put it back in its place. The Tuireann asked him to play the harp to them, so he played the sleep tune, and the king and all his court fell asleep and did not wake until the same hour the following day. And I know there's lots of people who suffer from insomnia, who would dearly love to have such a tune played for them. Next, he played a plaintive air, and they all wept. Lastly, he played a measure which sent them into transports of joy. When Nuada had seen all these numerous talents of Lugh, he began to wonder whether one so gifted would not be of great help against the Fomors. He took counsel with the others, and by their advice lent his throne to Lugh for 13 days, taking the sage's seat at his side. So impressed was Nuada by this young newcomer, Lugh, that he actually vacated his throne and allowed Lugh to sit in it for the course of 13 days. Lugh summoned all the Tuireann to a council. The Fomors are certainly going to make a war on us, he said. What can each of you do to help? Dian Kecht, the physician, said, I will completely cure everyone who is wounded, provided his head is not cut off, or his brain or spinal marrow hurt. Very interesting. I, said Gobnew the smith, will replace every broken lance and sword with a new one, even though the war lasts 7 years. And I will make the lances so well that they shall never miss their mark or fail to kill. Dullab, the smith of the Fomors, cannot do as much as that. The fate of the fighting will be decided by my lances. And I, said Cregne, the bronze worker, will furnish all the rivets for the lances, the hilts for the swords, and the rims and bosses for the shields. And I, said Luchtene, the carpenter, will provide all the shields and lance shafts. Jacqueline Kennedy Art says that she's just been inspired to paint. Wonderful. I can't wait to see that, Jacqueline. That's brilliant. Ogma the champion promised to kill the king of the Fomors with thrice 9 of his followers and to capture 1/3 of his army. And you, O Dagda, said Lugh, what will you do? I will fight, said the Dagda, both with force and with craft. Wherever the 2 armies meet, I will crush the bones of the Fomors with my club till they are like hailstones under a horse's feet. And you, O Morrigu, was momentarily distracted by some noise in the household. And you, O Morrigu, said Lugh, I will pursue them when they flee, she replied, and I always catch what I chase. And you, O Carpra, son of Eton, said Lugh to the poet, what can you do? I will pronounce an immediately effective curse upon them. By one of my satires I will take away all their honour, and, enchanted by me, they shall not be able to stand against our warriors. And ye, O sorcerers, what will ye do? We will hurl by our magic arts, replied Mochan, the head sorcerer, the 12 mountains of Ireland at the Fomors. These mountains will be Slieve League, Denna Ulad, the Mourne Mountains, Bree Rúri, Slieve Bloom, Slieve Snechta, Slemish, Blay Slieve, Neffin, Slieve Macu, Belgodon, Segish, and Cruachan Aigla. That's interesting. Segish is also the name of a mountain range, the Curlew Hills between Roscommon and Sligo. Cruachan Aigla, of course, is Croagh Patrick. That's its pre-Christian name. Then Lugh asked the cupbearers what they would do. We will hide away by magic, they said, the 12 chief lakes and the 12 chief rivers of Ireland from the Fomors, so that they shall not be able to find any water, however thirsty they may be. Those waters will conceal themselves from the Fomors, so that they shall not get a drop, while they will give drink to the people of the goddess Danu as long as the war lasts, even if it lasts 7 years. And they told Lugh that the 12 chief lakes were Lough Gerrog, Lough Limnig, which is the estuary of the Shannon, or hence where Limerick is located, Lough Corrib, Lough Ree, Lough Mask, Strangford Lough, Lough Lake, Lough Nay, Lough Foyle, Lough Gara, Lough Ray, and Marloch, and that the 12 chief rivers were the Bush, the Boyne, the Ban, the Nem, the Lee, the Shannon, the Moy, the Sligo, the Erne, the Finn, the Liffey, and the Sure. Finally, the Druid Figol, son of Mamos, said, I will send 3 streams of fire into the faces of the Fomors, and I will take away 2/3 of their valour and strength. But every breath drawn by the people of the goddess Danu will only make them more valorous and strong, so that even if the fighting lasts 7 years, they will not be weary of it. All decided to make ready for a war and to give the direction of it to Lugh. And that concludes the chapter of Squire's book, which is titled The Rise of the Sun God. I'm just having a look at the next one. Do we want to press on, or will we leave it till the next day? Where are we? Half an hour. Oh, that's a longer one, I think. Well, sure, maybe we'll read a bit of it, you know. Oh, that's a very long one. Okay. Well, we might read a bit more, because I appreciate that it's only it's been less than half an hour. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer questions if I can answer them. Any comments or questions? Just checking down through that list to see if I've missed anything. Doesn't appear that I have, not just yet. I'm just going to check on the phone to see if there's anything I'm missing. Sorry about this. 19 comments. Yeah, well, that looks like it's about right. More, please, says Margaret. Okay, let us plough on for at least a while. And the reason I'm doing this early this evening is because I can't do it later because I'm doing other things. But never mind, because this could become a very regular feature. Chapter 8 is called the Gaelic Argonauts. The preparations for this war are said to have lasted 7 years. It was during the interval that there befell an episode which might almost be called the Argonautica of the Gaelic mythology. And this is the story. This story of the fate of the Children of Tuireann is mentioned in the 9th century Cormac's glossary. It is found in various Irish and Scottish manuscripts, including the Book of Lecan. The present retelling is from Eugene O'Curry's translation, published in Atlantis, Volume 9. In spite of the dethronement of Bres, the Fomors still claimed their annual tribute from the tribe of the Tuatha and sent their tax gatherers, 9 times 9 in number, to Balor's Hill to collect it. And Balor's Hill, of course, as we said yesterday, was the early name for Ishnach in Westmeath, the ancient centre of Ireland. But while they waited for the gods to come to tender their submission and their subsidy, they saw a young man approaching them. He was riding upon Splendid Mane, the horse of Manannán mac Lir, and was dressed in Manannán's breastplate and helmet, through which no weapon could wound their wearer, and he was armed with sword and shield and poisoned darts. Like to the setting of the sun, tells the story, was the splendour of his countenance and his forehead, and they were not able to look in his face for the greatness of his splendour. And no wonder, for he was Lugh Lawfada, Lugh the far-shooter, the new-come sun-god of the Gaels. He fell upon the Fomorian tax-gatherers, killing all but 9 of them, and these he only spared that they might go back to their kinsmen and tell how the gods had received them. There was consternation in the undersea country. "Who can this terrible warrior be?" asked Balor. "I know," said Balor's wife. "He must be the son of our daughter Ethna. And I foretell that, since he has cast in his lot with his father's people, we shall never bear rule in Erin again." The chiefs of the Fomors saw that this slaughter of their tax gatherings signified that the Tuatha meant fighting. They held a council to debate on it. There came to it Elahan and Tethra and Indech, kings of the Fomors, Bres himself, and Balor of the stout blows, Kellen the crooked tooth, Balor's wife, Balor's 12 white-mouthed sons, and all the chief Fomorian warriors and druids. Meanwhile, upon earth, Lugh was sending messengers all over Erin to assemble the Tuatha. Upon this errand went Lugh's father Kian, who seems to have been a kind of lesser solar deity, son of Diancecht, god of medicine. Excuse me. As Kian was going over the plain of Morhevna, he saw 3 armed warriors approaching him, and when they got nearer, he recognized them as the 3 sons of Tuireann, son of Ogma, whose names were Brian, Yuchar, and Yucharba. Between these 3 and Kian, with his brothers Kehe and Ku, there was, for some reason, a private enmity. Kian saw that he was now at a disadvantage. "If my brothers were with me," he said to himself, "what a fight we would make! But as I am alone, it would be best for me to conceal myself." Looking round, he saw a herd of pigs feeding on the plain. Like all the gods, he had the faculty of shape-shifting, so, striking himself with a magic wand, he changed himself into a pig, joined the herd, and began feeding with them. There's a very interesting interlude here, and this, of course, again, is from the story of the fate of the Children of Tuireann. And Wilma Ethna Gypsy. Ethna, that's an interesting name. We've just been reading about that. The story of Kian hitting himself in the head with a magic wand and changing himself into a pig is very interesting because very more recent folklore about the Black Pig's Dyke, or the run of the Black Pig, or the Black Pig's Race, which is a story that's commonplace in the east of Ireland, in this area, in parts of Ulster, in Kildare, parts of the Midlands. Talks about when the Black Pig runs again, there'll be a great slaughter or a great battle, or the end of the world will come. And interestingly, in that story, there's a schoolmaster or a headmaster who hits himself with a magic wand and transforms into a pig that runs across the country. I wonder if it's all related back to this story of Kian. But when he had been seen by the sons of Tuireann, he had been seen by the sons of Tuireann. What has become of the warrior who was walking on the plain a moment ago? Said Brian to his brothers. We saw him then, they replied, but we do not know where he is now. Then you have not used the proper vigilance which is needed in time of war, said the elder brother. However, I know what has become of him. Then you have not... I know what has become of him. He has struck himself with a druidical wand and changed himself into a pig. And there he is, in that herd, rooting up the ground, just like all the other pigs. I can also tell you who he is. His name is Kian, and you know that he is no friend of ours. It is a pity that he has taken refuge among the pigs, they replied, for they belong to some one of the Tuireann, and even if we were to kill them all, Kian might still escape us. Again, Brian reproached his brothers. You are very ignorant, he said, if you cannot distinguish a magical beast from a natural beast. However, I will show you. And thereupon he struck his two brothers with his own wand of shape-changing, and turned them into two swift, slender hounds, and set them upon the pigs. The magic hounds soon found the magic pig, and drove it out of the herd onto the open plain. Then Brian threw his spear and hit it. The wounded pig came to a stop. It was an evil deed of yours, casting that spear, it cried in a human voice. For I am not a pig, but Kian, son of Dian Cecht. So give me quarter. Yuchar and Yucharba would have granted it and let him go, but their fiercer brother swore that Kian should be put an end to, even if he came back to life 7 times. So Kian tried a fresh ruse. Give me leave, he asked, only to return to my own shape before you slay me. Gladly, replied Brian, for I would much rather kill a man than a pig. So Kian spoke the befitting spell, cast off his pig's disguise, and stood before them in his own shape. You will be obliged to spare my life now, he said. We will not, replied Brian. Then it will be the worst day's work for all of you that you ever did in your lives, he answered. For if you had killed me in the shape of a pig, you would only have to pay the value of a pig. But if you kill me now, I tell you that there never has been, and there never will be, anyone killed in this world for whose death a greater blood fine will be exacted than for mine. But the sons of Tuireann would not listen to him. They slew him and pounded his body with stones until it was a crushed mass. 6 times they tried to bury him, and the earth cast him back in horror. But the 7th time the mould held him, and they put stones upon him to keep him down. They left him buried there and went to Tara. Meanwhile, Lugh had been expecting his father's return. As he did not come, he determined to go and look for him. He traced him to the plain of Merhevna, and there he was at fault. But the indignant earth itself, which had witnessed the murder, spoke to Lugh and told him everything. So Lugh dug up his father's corpse and made certain how he had come to his death. Then he mourned over him and laid him back in the earth, and heaped a barrow over him, and set up a pillar with his name on it in Ulm. He went back to Tara and entered the great hall. It was filled with the people of the goddess Danu, the Tuireann, and among them Lugh saw the 3 sons of Tuireann. So he shook the chief's chain, with which the Gaels used to ask for a hearing in an assembly, and when all were silent, he said, People of the goddess Danu, I ask you a question. What would be the vengeance that any of you would take upon one who had murdered his father? A great astonishment fell upon them, and Nuada, their king, said, Surely it is not your father that has been murdered. It is, replied Lugh, and I am looking at those who murdered him, and they know how they did it better than I do. Then Nuada declared that nothing short of hewing the murderer of his father limb from limb would satisfy him, and all the others said the same, including the sons of Tuireann. The very ones who did the deed say that, cried Lugh. Then let them not leave the hall till they have settled with me about the blood fine to be paid for it. If it was I who had killed your father, said the king, I should think myself lucky if you were willing to accept a fine instead of vengeance. The sons of Tuireann took counsel together in whispers. Yuchar and Yucharbah were in favour of admitting their guilt, but Brian was afraid that, if they confessed, Lugh would withdraw his offer to accept a fine and would demand their deaths. So he stood out and said that, though it was not they who had killed Kian, yet, sooner than remain under Lugh's anger, as he suspected them, they would pay the same fine as if they had. Certainly you shall pay the fine, said Lugh, and I will tell you what it shall be. It is this: 3 apples, and a pig's skin, and a spear, and 2 horses, and a chariot, and 7 pigs, and a hound whelp, and a cooking spit, and 3 shouts on a hill. That is the fine, and if you think it is too much, I will remit some of it. But if you do not think it is too much, then pay it. If it were 100 times that, replied Brian, we should not think it too much. Indeed, it seems so little that I fear there must be some treachery concealed in it. I do not think it too little, replied Lugh. Give me your pledge before the people of the goddess Danu that you will pay it faithfully, and I will give you mine, that I will ask no more. So the sons of Tuireann bound themselves before the Tuatha De Danann to pay the fine to Lugh. When they had sworn and given sureties, Lugh turned to them again. I will now, he said, explain to you the nature of the fine you have pledged yourselves to pay me, so that you may know whether it is too little or not. And with foreboding hearts, the sons of Tuireann set themselves to listen. The 3 apples that I have demanded, he began, are 3 apples from the garden of the Hesperides in the east of the world. You will know them by 3 signs. They are the size of the head of a month-old child. They are the colour of burnished gold, and they taste of honey. Wounds are healed and diseases cured by eating them, and they do not diminish in any way by being eaten. Whoever casts one of them hits anything he wishes, and then it comes back into his hand, a bit like a boomerang apple. I will accept no other apples instead of these. Their owners keep them perpetually guarded because of a prophecy that 3 young warriors from the west of the world will come to take them by force, and, brave as you may be, I do not think that you will ever get them. The pig skin that I have demanded is the pig skin of Tuas, king of Greece. It has 2 virtues. Its touch perfectly cures all wounded or sick persons, if only there is any life still left in them. And every stream of water through which it passes is turned into wine for 9 days. I do not think that you will get it from the king of Greece, either with his consent or without it. And can you guess what spear it is that I have demanded? Asked Lugh. We cannot, they said. It is the poison spear of Pisaer, Pisear, Pezar, pronounced Pezar, Pezar, king of Persia. It is irresistible in battle. It is so fiery that its blade must always be kept under water, lest it destroy the city in which it is kept. You will find it very difficult to obtain. And the 2 horses and the chariot are the 2 wonderful horses of Dobar, pronounced D-O-B-A-R, Dobar, king of Sicily, which run equally well over land and sea, and there are no other horses in the world like them, and no other vehicle equal to the chariot. And the 7 pigs are the pigs of Azal. There's the dog. He doesn't like mention of Azal. Yeah, okay, we'll move on then. King of the Golden Pillars. Though they may be killed every night, they are found alive again the next day, and every person that eats part of them can never be afflicted with any disease. We could do with some of those in Ireland and in the world right now with the COVID-19 outbreak. And the hound whelp I claim is the hound whelp of the king of Iroda. It's good. It's I-O or U-A-I-D-H-E, but there's a pronunciation guide, I-R-O-D-A. the king of Iroda. Her name is Follinish. Every wild beast she sees catches at once. She catches at once. It will not be easy for you to secure her. Interestingly, that the dog is barking as I read this section. The cooking spit which you must get for me is one of the cooking spits of the women of the island of Fincara. Yes, thank you for the pronunciation guide, which is at the bottom of the sea between Erin and Alba. You have also pledged yourselves to give 3 shouts upon a hill. The hill upon which they must be given is the hill called Cnuk Midcana. I would pronounce that Mio Chuin. Now, Mio, Miodh, is the middle, and you might have heard of Chach Michorta in the Tara, the house of the middle way, and Chuin is that crying, Cuinu, in the north of Lochlan. Mio Chuin and his sons do not allow shouts to be given on that hill. Besides this, it is they who gave my father his military education, and even if I were to forgive you, they would not. So that, though you achieve all the other adventures, I think that you will fail in this one. Now that you know what sort of a fine it is that you have bargained to pay me, said Lugh, and fear and astonishment fell upon the sons of Tuireann. This tale is evidently the work of some ancient Irish storyteller who wished to compile from various sources a more or less complete account of how the Gaelic gods obtained their legendary possessions. The spear of Pizar, king of Persia, is obviously the same weapon as the lance of Lugh, which another tradition describes as having been brought by the Tuatha De Danann from their original home in the city of Gorias. Follinish, the whelp of the king of Iroda, sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with the translations, is Lugh's hound of the mightiest deeds, which was irresistible in battle, and which turned any running water it bathed into wine. Well, there you go, there's a nice one. A property here transferred to the magic pig's skin of King Tuas. The 7 swine of the King of the Golden Pillars must be the same undying porkers from whose flesh Manannán mac Lir made the Feast of Age, which preserved the eternal youth of the gods. It was with horses and chariot that ran along the surface of the sea that Manannán used to journey to and fro between Erin and the Celtic Elysium in the west. The apples that grew in the garden of the Hesperides were surely of the same celestial growth as those that fed the inhabitants of that immortal country, while the cooking spit reminds us of 3 such implements at Tara, made by Gobnew and associated with the names of the Dagda and the Morrigu. The burden of collecting all these treasures was placed upon the shoulders of the 3 sons of Tuireann. They consulted together and agreed that they could never hope to succeed unless they had Manannán's magic horse, Splendid Mane, and Manannán's magic coracle, Wave Sweeper. But both these had been lent to Manannán by Lugh himself, so the sons of Tuireann were obliged to humble themselves to beg them from Lugh. The sun god would not lend them the horse for fear of making their task too easy, but he let them have the boat because he knew how much the spear of Pizar and the horses of Dor would be needed, or Dobar would be needed in the coming war with the Fomors. They bade farewell to their father and went down to the shore and put out to sea, taking their sister with them. What on earth for, you might ask? Which portion of the fine shall we seek first? Said the others to Brian. We will seek them in the order in which they were demanded, he replied. So they directed the magic boat to sail to the garden of the Hesperides, and presently they arrived there. They landed at a harbour and held a council of war. It was decided that their best chance of obtaining 3 of the apples would be by taking the shapes of hawks. Thus they would have the strength enough in their claws to carry the apples away, together with sufficient quickness upon the wing to hope to escape the arrows, darts, and sling stones, which would be shot and hurled at them by the warders of the garden. They swooped down upon the orchard from above. It was done so swiftly that they carried off the 3 apples, unhit either by shaft or stone, but their difficulties were not yet over. In fact, obviously they were just beginning. The king of the country had 3 daughters who were well skilled in witchcraft. By sorcery they changed themselves into 3 ospreys and pursued the 3 hawks. But the sons of Tuireann reached the shore first, and changing themselves into swans, dived into the sea. They came up close to their coracle and got into it, and sailed swiftly away with the spoil. Thus their first quest was finished, and they voyaged on to Greece to seek the pig skin of King Tuish. No one could go without some excuse into a king's court, so they decided to disguise themselves as poets and to tell the doorkeeper that they were professional bards from Erin, seeking largesse at the hands of kings. The porter let them into the great hall, where the poets of Greece were singing before the king. When those had all finished, Brian rose and asked permission to show his art. This was accorded, and he sang. I'm not going to sing. O Tuish, we conceal not thy fame. We praise thee as the oak above the kings. The skin of a pig, bounty without hardness. This is the reward which I ask for it. A stormy host and raging sea are a dangerous power should one oppose it. The skin of a pig, bounty without hardness. This is the reward I ask, O Tuish. That is a good poem, said the king, only I do not understand it. I will explain it, said Brian. We praise thee as the oak above the kings. This means that as the oak excels all other trees, so do you excel all other kings in nobility and generosity. The skin of a pig, bounty without hardness, that is a pig skin which you have, O Tuish, and which I should like to receive as a reward for my poem. A stormy host and raging sea are a dangerous power should one oppose it. This means to say that we are not used to going without anything on which we have set our hearts, O Tuish. I should have liked your poem better, replied the king, if my pig skin had not been mentioned in it. It was not a wise thing for you to have done, O poet, but I will measure 3 fills of red gold out of the skin, and you shall have those. May all good be thine, O king, answered Brian. I knew that I should get a noble reward. So the king sent for the pig skin to measure out the gold width. But as soon as Brian saw it, he seized it with his left hand and slew the man who was holding it. And Yuchar and Yucharba also hacked about them, and they cut their way down to the boat, leaving the king of Greece among the dead behind them. Charming, huh? And now we will go and get King Pizer's spear, said Brian. So leaving Greece, they sailed in their coracle to Persia, as you do. Emer says, I love their shape-shifting natures. Hello, Emer. There you are again. Yeah, so do I. So the king sent for the pig skin to measure. Sorry, I've read that bit, haven't I? And now we will go to the kings. So leaving Greece, they sailed. Yes. I'm repeating myself now because I got distracted. Their plan of disguising themselves as poets had served them so well that they decided to make use of it again. So they went into the king of Persia's hall in the same way as they had entered that of the king of Greece. Brian first listened to the poets of Persia singing, then he sang his own song. Small the esteem of any spear with Pizar. The battles of foes are broken, no oppression to Pizar, everyone whom he wounds. A yew tree, the finest of the wood, it is called king without opposition. May that splendid shaft drive on, yon crowd into their wounds of death. That is a good poem, O man of Erin, said the king, but why is my spear mentioned in it? The meaning is this, replied Brian. I should like to receive that spear as a reward for my poem. You make a rash request, said the king. If I spare your life after having heard it, it will be a sufficient reward for your poem. Brian had one of the magic apples in his hand, and he remembered its boomerang-like quality. He hurled it full at the king of Persia's face, dashing out his brains. The Persians flew to arms, but the 3 sons of Tuireann conquered them and made them yield up the spear. They had now to travel to Sicily to obtain the horses and chariot of King Dobar. But they were afraid to go as poets this time, for fear the fame of their deeds might have got abroad. Clever thinking. They therefore decided to pretend to be mercenary soldiers from Erin and offer the king of Sicily their service. This, they thought, would be the easiest way of finding out where the horses and the chariot were kept. So they went and stood on the green before the royal court. When the king of Sicily heard that there had come mercenaries from Erin seeking wages from the kings of the world, he invited them to take service with him. They agreed, but though they stayed with him a fortnight and a month, they never saw the horses or even found out where they were kept. So they went to the king and announced that they wished to leave him. Why? He asked, for he did not want them to go. "We will tell you, O king," replied Brian. "It is because we have not been honoured with your confidence, as we have been accustomed with other kings." We don't mention that we slaughtered some of them. "You have 2 horses and a chariot, the best in the world, and we have not even been allowed to see them." "I would have shown them to you on the first day if you had asked me," said the king, "and you shall see them at once, for I have seldom had warriors with me so good as you are, and I do not wish you to leave me." So he sent for the steeds and asked them and had them yoked to the chariot, and the sons of Tuireann were witness to their marvellous speed and how they could run equally well over land or water. Brian made a sign to his brothers, and they watched their opportunity carefully, and as the chariot passed close behind them, Brian leaped into it, hurling its driver over the side. Then, turning the horses, he struck King Dobar with Pizair's spear and killed him. He took his 2 brothers up into the chariot, and they drove away. By the time the sons of Tuireann reached the country of Exile, king of the Pillars of Gold, rumour had gone before them. The king came down to the harbour to meet them, and asked them if it were really true that so many kings had fallen at their hands. They replied that it was true, but that they had no quarrel with any of them, only that they must obtain at all costs the fine demanded by Lugh. Then Exile asked them why they had come to his land, and they told him that they needed his 7 pigs to add to the tribute. So Exile thought it better to give them up and to make friends with the 3 sons of Tuireann than to fight with such warriors. The sons of Tuireann were very glad at this, for they were growing weary of battles, as I'm sure they were. It happened that the king of Eoruia, who had the hound whelp that Lugh had demanded, was the husband of King Exil's daughter. Therefore King Exile did not wish that there should be fighting between him and the 3 sons of Tuireann. He proposed to Brian and his brothers that he should sail with them to Eoruia. I'm just going to double check what it says the pronunciation of that should be. I'm just trying to pronounce it as if it was Irish. Eroda. Should sail with them to Eroda to try to persuade the king of the country to give up the hound whelp peacefully. They consented, and all set foot safely on the delightful, wonderful shores of Eroda, as the manuscript calls them. But King Exile's son-in-law would not listen to reason. He assembled his warriors and fought, but the sons of Tuireann defeated them and compelled their king to yield up the hound whelp as the ransom for his life. You can imagine, can't you, that this story was told by storytellers, or I don't know if we call them Shanachie, in the pre-writing era, that this must have been a very entertaining story, that people were sitting there listening to all these exploits and probably told with such gusto and confidence and skill that perhaps that many of the people who were listening thought that these were in fact records of real deeds. All these quests had been upon the earth, but the next was harder. No coracle, not even Manannán's wave sweeper, could penetrate to the island of Fiancueve. Again, I have to look up the pronunciation. I keep forgetting. Fincara. That doesn't look right at all, does it? I'm just going to butcher it and call it Fiancueve, because that's what it looks like. Fiancueve, in the depths of the sea that severs Éireann from Alba. So that's the Irish Sea. So Brian left his brothers and put on his water dress, with his transparency of glass upon his head, evidently an ancient Irish anticipation of the modern diver's dress. Thus equipped, he explored the bottom of the sea for 14 days before he found the island. But when at last he reached it and entered the hall of its queen, she and her sea maidens were so amazed at Brian's hardihood in having penetrated to their kingdom that they presented him with the cooking spit and sent him back safe. He didn't even have to fight for it. By this time, Lugh had found out by his magic arts that the sons of Tuireann had obtained all the treasures he had demanded as the blood fine. He desired to get them safely into his own custody before his victims went to give their 3 shouts upon Meochuin's hill. He therefore wove a druidical spell around them, so that they forgot the rest of their task altogether, and sailed back to Éireann. They searched for Lugh to give him the things, but he had gone away, leaving word that they were to be handed over to Nuada, the Tuireann king. As soon as they were in safekeeping, Lugh came back to Tara and found the sons of Tuireann there. And he said to them, "Do you not know that it is unlawful to keep back any part of a blood fine? So have you given these 3 shouts upon Muirchuin's hill?" Then the magic mist of forgetfulness fell from them, and they remembered. Sorrowfully, they went back to complete their task. Muirchuin himself was watching for them, and when he saw them land, he came down to the beach. Brian attacked him, and they fought with the swiftness of 2 bears and the ferocity of 2 lions, until Muirchuin fell. Then Muirchuin's 3 sons, Corc, Cun, and A, had come out to avenge their father, and they drove their spears through the bodies of the 3 sons of Tuireann. But the 3 sons of Tuireann also drove their spears through the bodies of the 3 sons of Muirchuin. Yes, at this stage, I'm sure the audience in prehistory were incredulous, The 3 sons of Muirchuin were killed, and the 3 sons of Tuireann were so sorely wounded that birds might have flown through their bodies from one side to the other. Nevertheless, Brian was able to stand upright, and he held his 2 brothers, one in each hand, and kept them on their feet, and all together they gave 3 faint, feeble shouts. Their coracle bore them, still living, to Erin. They sent their father Tuireann as a suppliant to Lugh, begging him to lend them the magic pigskin to heal their wounds. But Lugh would not, for he had counted upon their fight with the sons of Muirchuin to avenge his father Kian's death. So the children of Tuireann resigned themselves to die, and their father made a farewell song over them and over himself, and died with them. Thus ends that famous tale, the fate of the sons of Tuireann, known as one of the 3 sorrowful stories of Erin. And there you go, folks. That is where I'm going to leave it for this evening, just to say that there are several renditions of the fate of the sons of Tuireann available. I think, is that... I wonder, is it in Joyce's... the fate of the Children of Tuireann is in P.W. Joyce's Ancient Celtic Romances. That's a book that you can pick up relatively cheaply, especially secondhand on the internet. But here's a very beautiful, beautifully bound translation of Ia Clunit Tuireann, the fate of the Children of Tuireann, which is originally published... Sorry, I better show you that properly. Originally published by Gill and Son in O'Connell Street in Dublin in 1901. And this is beautiful because it has the Irish version of the story in Old Gaelic script at the beginning of the book, and then the translation in English afterwards. And it's in large print, so if you're hard of if you have difficulty seeing or anything, it's good. And it has a set of notes in the back of it relating to the text, and it also has a folklore or a dictionary or a glossary of terms at the end. Now, I can't precisely remember where I got that. It's a republication, Richard J. O'Duffy. That might be one that you might be interested. If you're interested in, let's say, an authentic and scholarly translation of that story. As I say, Squire's work is pretty good. It's pretty reliable, but the translations are not always entirely perfect. Shamanic, Emer Stassen says, and Margaret says very shamanic. Yes, I love their shape-shifting natures. Indeed, that's a big aspect of Tuireann mythology. Anyway, I'm going to wait a moment for questions. If there are no questions, we will call it a wrap. And don't forget that this is something that I decided to do to counteract the cabin fever and the negativity and the fear around the coronavirus scare, and just to try and lighten things up a little bit for people. So I'm going to try and do these regularly. I can't promise that I'll do it every day, but I'll certainly try and do it regularly. At the end of this, I'm going to click Save Video, so the video will come back up on the Facebook page. when it's finished. And I'm also going to upload a copy of it to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. And I don't think there are any other questions by the looks of it. Just a very quick note, I have to get the plug in that if you want to support my work and become a patron of Mythical Ireland, patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. That I've just typed in as a comment. Sorry. I'm not sure what side you're seeing that on. Camera's back to front side. That side. Okay. There's a link to the Patreon page if you want to become a patron. If you wanted to make a one-off donation, and I'm not doing this for donations, but just to mention it at the end, there is a link to where you can make a one-off donation on PayPal. Judy says, I'm enjoying this so much. Well, good, because there's lots more. Now, even if I'm not directly reading, because I was saying yesterday, I'm not going to be able to read all the time because a lot of work, modern work, is copyrighted. I'm only reading from stuff that I believe is out of copyright. What I will be able to do is read my own work. And what we'll also be able to do is to say, have a theme for the night, talk about a particular deity or a particular theme in mythology, and I'll talk to you about the sources, and we'll read snippets from different sources, so we're not impinging on anyone's copyright. Richard O'Neill says, can you recommend a good all-round collection of Irish myths and legends? Well, actually, that one, I mean, Squire is quite good. Rolleston. That's my version of it, but I've actually given away a few copies of this over the past few years. Thomas Rolleston's Celtic mythology, or whatever it's called. It's just Celtic myths and legends. You see, you can get these cheap. If you can get these secondhand, and you can get them for just a few quid online. Do you know what's brilliant? And it's a dictionary. And I know that you wouldn't read a dictionary as such, but this is fabulous. The Oxford Dictionary of Celtic Mythology by James McKillop. I have referenced this work extensively in all my books. It is a fabulous work. I believe this is McKillop's defining work. It's fantastic. I purchased this hardcover copy secondhand in a bookshop in Glastonbury last year for £12 sterling. But I know that you can get paperback versions of it secondhand on the internet. There's one other that I should mention, and it's quite scholarly, but it would be well worth investing in. Just give me 1 second. And that is the late Daithí O'Hogan's Encyclopedia of Myth, Legend and Romance. Now, that has been published in different forms over the years. His name is very... Well, if you're not Irish, it is, Richard. And you're an O'Neill, so O'Neill, so you probably can, but that's the spelling of his name. He's got fadas all over the place. Daithí O'Hogan. Okay, Daithí O'Hogan. Now, Daithí is deceased now, and again, this is a fabulous work. A little bit like McKillop, but I suppose McKillop. I think they're both equally brilliant, to be honest with you. So have a look for that one as well. You might want to read it from cover to cover. This is like an encyclopedia and a dictionary, but I have just found, like, if you wanted to get an introduction, some of the popular works are great, and then some of the more scholarly works, well, we'll get to those as we're talking about stuff over the next while. Margaret says, I asked earlier on the live feed, do you think the 7 sons on the curbs relate to the 7-Year War? I don't know. I'm not sure how they would relate. I mean, 7 sons equal to 7 years, but how they would further relate to Doubt, because Doubt doesn't really have mythology concerned with the war. So I'm not sure how we kind of make that connection. Possibly. I don't know. Maureen O'Leary, hello Maureen, is in from snowy Minnesota. Well, we are currently experiencing a lot of rain. We've had one of the wettest winters on record, the wettest springs on record. It's currently 8.6 degrees Celsius outside, so there's no snow here, I can tell you that. Not at the moment anyway, and we don't want it. The ancient the ancients certainly were aware of the world they lived in. Well, absolutely, 100%. Very interesting in those stories about how you pick up on things like the fact that they valued the oak as being a great wood, because the archaeologists reckon that the timber posts in the great henges of Brunabonia were made of oak. Just little things like that. The pig is a very important creature in Irish mythology. And because in Neolithic times, staple meat in the diet was the meat of cows, cattle, and of pigs. And pig feasting was a big thing in the Neolithic. And tied in with that is the fact that the Dagda had his 2 pigs that we mentioned yesterday in Newgrange, one of which was fattened ready for the slaughter and the eating, and one of which was roasting on the spit. Very interesting times. So that's it. We're an hour and 10 minutes. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. And as I said, intend to do quite a lot more of this if time allows. I'm going to be trying to do this every day, at least for the next week, but that just depends on whether time is available. We might think about a special theme for St. Patrick's Day. How about we do something on St. Patrick's Day, and I'll talk to you about that on the page beforehand, about what we might talk about. And we might talk about the mythology of St. Patrick, because quite a lot of it is mythology, I believe. Anyway, so there you go. Thanks a million, folks. Don't forget to keep an eye on the Facebook page. Anyway, Facebook is not serving the page posts to the 53,000 people who follow it. In fact, it is only serving a lot of the posts to a small fraction of that. So come back to the page to keep an eye on the updates. Facebook.com/Mythical Ireland, or put it as see first on your page's feed. Thanks a million, and very good evening to you all. I don't know how to end this now. Oh, there we go. End live video. Hope you enjoyed yourselves.